Good people, good people, good people. Welcome back to the Gumtown Podcast, episode 151. I'm Doug B. If you tuned in to this podcast, thank you for your time and your attention. I really appreciate you giving it a shot. Today's guest is the founder and executive director of the Pivot Path. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm sure we'll all be inspired by her story. Let's chop it up with Ashley Johnson. Ashley, how's it going?
It's going good, Doug. How are you doing today?
Glad to hear that, and all is well on my end too. First things
Awesome.
first. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My apologies.
No, I'm saying awesome. I'm glad you're doing well.
Yes, ma'am. First things first, welcome back to the podcast. And thank you again for giving me a few minutes of your time to chop it up on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Thanks for creating this opportunity for entrepreneurs and business owners to talk about their business. It's greatly appreciated.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, here to talk about all the great things you have going on as an entrepreneur, but specifically the pivot path. But before we talk about what you got going on with the business, let's get to know the woman behind the brand. For those who haven't had a chance to check out our previous conversation, just give us a little background about yourself.
So, born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, and my path, pivot path, no pun intended, were not like most people in my family, right? I had a great family, great upbringing, and along the way, I decided to make decisions that ultimately caused me to drop out of high school, right? But I know we'll get into that more about in the podcast. But I'm Ashley. So glad to be here, Montgomery native. Like as I mentioned, I am an entrepreneur. I'm an author. I'm a mother of two beautiful children. Just a serious entrepreneur looking to advance the kingdom, advance people in my community, and help people move forward.
Yes, ma'am. Powerful stuff, and appreciate you for sharing your background with us,
For sure. Thank you.
ma'am.
I always
So,
get a little nervous talking about myself. I know you can attest to this, or maybe other people can too, but it's so easy to talk about other people. But when it comes to yourself, you're like, oh, what do I really say? What do I do? So, yeah.
uh, absolutely, I definitely understand it. I'm in the same boat. It's definitely tough to talk about myself, especially kind of sad to say this. It's tough to talk about your accomplishments and the things you got going on. Like it's easy to remember the stuff that you don't like about yourself. Ain't that crazy?
Right. Yep. Yep. You're absolutely right.
Yes, ma'am. So that's amazing. So appreciate you for again for just sharing that and just being transparent about the things your different pivots and the things that you've gone through and no matter what, it just looks like well, of course, because you have gone on to get your degree and get your MBA, like no matter what decisions you
Mhm.
made that led to you leaving high school when you did, you still finished in your own way and you figured it out. And that's amazing.
Yeah. It's a God thing. Truly a God thing.
Absolutely. So you being a serial entrepreneur, I'm just curious, Ashley, for those who don't know, like where did you get that from? Does the entrepreneurship thing run in your family?
It runs in my family. My great grandma, Lord bless her. So she was an entrepreneur. She had a juke joint back in the day. And my mom is an entrepreneur. I just saw it growing up, just having a passion to make your own money, create your own freedom, but also give back to those, that are around you. So it's definitely in my blood.
Okay, sounds good, and definitely my condolences to your grandmother. And
Thank you.
yes, ma'am, the juke joint, they was partying. So grandma had them partying back in the day. That's all
They,
right.
they were they were partying down there in Sandtown, Millbrook, Alabama.
Okay, sounds good. So Granny
Mhm.
and of course your mom just being an entrepreneur, so you got a chance to be exposed to that growing up. So it
Yeah.
sounds it just sounds like you just pretty much just carrying on, you just carrying the torch, the entrepreneurship torch. That's amazing.
Yep. Just carrying a torch and just carrying it a little bit deeper than they did, and hoping my daughter pick it up and carry even further than I have.
Yes, ma'am. So let's talk about the pivot path. What you got going on over there?
Okay, so the pivot path, I light up when I talk about a pivot path because it was absolutely uh born out of my story. So I know I mentioned in the introduction of myself that I was a high school dropout. I dropped out in 2006. Went on to get my GED from Trenton. I went to the military shortly thereafter, and I've, like you said, gained degrees along the way, and skills as well. But I work in my businesses, and in about 2022, early 2023, I found myself just doing the work, and it's great work that I do in my other business, which is I do administrative consulting, but it's what I know how to do naturally. I can do it in my sleep, right? So I just began to ask God on this transitional journey to give me more purpose. In 2022, I went through a divorce. If anybody has gone through that, it's a transition period. And in that time, I began to just ask God, show me my purpose, give me more purpose. And He began to tell me that my story was going to be the reason why the level to me bringing people to the kingdom, but also my deliverance from things I did in my past. So the Pivot Path was birthed just this year in 2024. We're 7 months in. We have had great success. Before I tell you that, let me tell you what the Pivot Path is because I get ahead of myself. So the Pivot Path is an adult education program. We're based here in Montgomery, Alabama, and we assist adult learners with GED prep, training, and exams. So everything is free to the student. They don't have to pay for any books, any exams, any training. We have volunteer teachers that come in every week on a rotating basis to teach our adults and help them just refresh their skills on whatever level they need to actually pass their GED exam. So we're really equipping adult learners to excel, to get back in the workforce, to gain better employment, to just create that foundation of education so they can move to the next level and be better for themselves, their children, and their community.
Wow, that's really powerful, and I appreciate you for your transparency and just talking about all the things you've been through, and even the most recent transition period that you just spoke to that happened a couple of years ago, and just how
Mhm.
all of that it led you to this point. And it's just so amazing, Ashley, and I'm sure you can attest to this. It's amazing how when we going through our storms and I go through, it doesn't make sense then, but once we get to the other side of it and here comes the pivot path, I'm pretty sure everything you've gone through in your life, it's come full circle and now it all makes sense.
It all makes sense. And you're right. And I got chills when you said that. It's so funny how God will use even the mistakes that we made to work out for our good, right? It's just it's so amazing. In 2006, when I decided to drop out of high school, I never thought in a million years that I would have an adult education program where I'm now getting national recognition, I'm getting national awards, national grants, yeah, I wouldn't imagine in a million years that this would be, but also the most important thing, I'm sorry, bringing people to know who God is, because the people who come through my program, I love them to death. They are like my little cousins, my aunties, my uncles. We become a family, but also they're being able to see the love of God through this program and know that God sees them. And I'm just so excited for all the lives that are being saved through the program professionally, personally, and spiritually.
Yes, ma'am, and that's powerful stuff. And that's definitely sounds like an environment, like you said, the family environment. People are coming to get education, and you also, get them in touch with God and get them on that spiritual path, get them tapped into that spiritual realm, and that's great.
Mhm.
And even just hearing you talk about going through the dropout in 2006 and not thinking you would be where you are today, it's just so interesting because a lot of times in our culture, and I can say that because it is what it is. A lot of times in our
Right,
culture, it's like if you drop out, it's the end all be all. You're a failure.
right,
You never,
right.
and a lot of our own
Yeah.
people, yeah, like they have us thinking like that's the end of it. And I commend you for not letting that be the end of your story because you could have easily allowed it to become the end of your story.
Right. And I'm a fighter, and I got that from my grandma, my great grandma as well. Never gonna stay down too long, but it is a stigma among our culture, but among other people too that think that our culture are the only people who get GEDs and only people who drop out, which is totally not true. It's also a stigma around people who drop out of high school that they don't know the curriculum. That's not true as well. Some people drop out because some of my students had to take care of their family. Some people had to be, the dad in the house and take care of the siblings, and they had different health issues. So it's different reasons why people decide to pivot from high school, not just because they don't get the curriculum and just because they're not smart. So that's one of my missions and my goals why I'm doing this work is to change the stigma around how people view people with GEDs.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head just in terms of why people transition out of high school and go on and get their GEDs. And most of the time, it has nothing to do with the curriculum. Like you were saying, people have to drop out to take care of family, or there are situations where they have children and they decide to leave school so they can take care of the children. So that's great that you've created the pivot path to get away from that stigma to empower people who've had to drop out of school for whatever
Right.
reasons. And it's not for anybody to judge or talk crap about them because oh such and such got their GED. Well, I commend whoever go back and finish, especially if you had some real life stuff happen, like your parents
Mhm.
got sick or you had a child and you had to drop out and take care of your child. So I just think that's amazing that it just sounds like you turned all your pain into purpose.
That yes, purpose. That's the key word. Purpose and empowerment, what you just said too. Empowering people because like you said, some studies show I've done a lot of research while I've been doing this work. Some studies show that some employers like to hire those who have gotten GEDs because it shows and the will to get out of any situation. So it shows that they have the initiative to do something past what they've already done. So the GED test is a hard test. I know many people think it may be easy, but it's definitely a high level test that they have to take for 4 sections and make a certain number in each section to pass. So it's not an scapegoat by any means.
Absolutely. And that what you said about just doing your research and employers, some employers they favor hiring people who going on to get their GED. It makes sense because it does somebody who can leave high school and have that courage to
Mhm.
go back, study for that tough exam that you just spoke about. It does show a different level of resilience and just persistence and just willingness to get it done. And again, you just also just help myself and others who had no idea that the GED test was that tough. I never knew it was that tough.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. And I know back in 2006, I think I passed every section except the math. The math is a beast. And I think I passed the math on the third try. It took me 3 times to pass the math. But that's why I tell my students, you don't give up on yourself, but it is a high level test. Many people think that it's easy, but it's really not. It's really not.
Hmm.
So I just get so proud of my students when they go take the test, they pass it. You see all of that stuff that people told them they couldn't do. You see all that stuff kind of come back before them, like, you know what, I do got this. I can do this. I can do that. And it's just so good to see.
Yes, ma'am. Good stuff. Good stuff. So you said some earlier, just in terms of wanting to transition into this space because what you were doing previously, you can do it in your sleep. And I just also want to just commend you for being willing to step out and do something that wasn't necessarily in your comfort zone. Because let's face it, Ashley, most of us, myself included, change is scary. A lot of us, we don't want to step outside of what we
Yeah.
are familiar with. So that actually
Mhm.
transition into that next portion, like whenever I have entrepreneurs on the platform, I like to talk about the aha moment, action, and audacity. Like, take us back to that aha moment when you had the idea to step out of your comfort zone and step into the space of what you're doing now with adult education.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question because it was really God pushing me out of what I was. So I was really comfortable in my consulting business. I had clients, set clients that were not going anywhere. And when I began to ask the Lord and Holy Spirit the question of what was next, I know this is not it for me. I know this is not what I'm supposed to do forever because like I said, I love doing it. I love the joy of talking to my clients, but it wasn't fulfilling. So when I began to ask the Holy Spirit, like, hey, what's next? Like, come on now, help me out. He began to remove clients from my business. Either they said they couldn't afford me anymore, they found somebody else. It was just happening like back to back to back. So I guess the aha moment or the push moment for me was when I was a business owner and I didn't have any clients. And I had to go back and be like, okay, sit down with myself and be like, okay, you asked God for this, He gave it to you. Now what you gonna do with it? So and I just like I said, many people just started coming to me saying, you know what, what's your story? What do you like to do? Like I like to help people. And like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, I just like to help people, believe in themselves. And long story short, the pivot path was thought about actually going right, right. So people began to come up to me, ask me, what I like to do and stuff like that. And I just began to hear the Holy Spirit say, hey, and if you, believe in the same God I believe in, you talk to prophets and people that don't even know you tell you things. So I just began to get a lot of prophetic words about, your story is gonna be the reason why you find your purpose. So I was like, what story? Like which one? Got so many of them. But the pivot path in adult education ended up being that thing. And I started the pivot path in 2024, January 2024. We're here in July now, and we have serviced over 30 adults in our program. We have volunteers that volunteer their time that don't get paid to help us with this mission. So it's just been a blessing. We had the Montgomery County City Council, all of them to believe in the program and give funds to help pay for practice tests and exams. And we've just been blessed. And I just thank God that He gave me the vision of the pivot path last year around this time.
Yes, ma'am. And that's powerful stuff. And again, it's just amazing just to hear you give God the credit. And why that's important is a lot of times it's easy to get caught up on yourself and get caught up in your ego. But I like how you always go back to God gave you the vision. You prayed for it.
He did.
And
Yeah.
that's amazing in itself. And I'm gonna tell you something else that's so key about what you were talking about earlier. You were saying how you praying to God, and you were saying, hey, this can't be the end of my story. Like this, like it has to be more for me. And it's interesting that he started taking clients away. In that moment, Ashley, it would have been
Yeah.
easy for you to panic and say, "Oh no, God, I didn't mean to take away. I meant, I mean, seriously, like I meant
Right.
add to my life." Because the thing with prayer, and I gained this perspective from a conversation I had a couple months ago with another guest on the podcast. He was telling me, just to paraphrase, because I don't want to butcher his words. He was saying, when you pray for stuff, God sends you a test first to see if you really want the stuff that you prayed for, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So true. And at the time, as I mentioned, I was going freshly through a divorce. So this was me starting all the way over. Divorce, how the typical man woman, the man is, paying everything. I wasn't the one who was paying anything, but I had to transition into paying everything. So I needed all my clients. I needed actually more clients than I had. But I could, like you said, easily panic, easily went into, woe is me. But I just began to press on, and God definitely made a way. And that's a whole nother story for another day, another podcast.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. So from the time you had the aha moment and you realized you wanted to launch the pivot path, how long did it take you to come up with a name and all that good stuff?
So it took me I'll say about 5 or 6 months. So this was in my head. And it was going to be called the About Face, like About Face Incorporated, because I was in the military. So I was trying to incorporate, think words about changing your life, right? So I was about to get ready to create my logo. I did all my logos, my website, my branding, all that I did it myself. And I was about to get ready to create the logo for About Face, and something just said pivot, because all About Face is you pivot on one foot and you turn around going a different way. So I began to put pivot, pivot this, pivot that, and I put pivot path, and I was like, something was like, that's it right there. So the pivot path was just named because, like I said, when you're going in one direction and you see that direction isn't working, or you're about to hit a brick wall, you have to pivot and go in a different direction. So the pivot path, a faith-based program, is all about seeing where you're going, knowing that it's not the way you need to go, and pivoting and making another decision, a good decision to go in a different direction.
Okay, that's awesome stuff. So it's gonna be About Faith Incorporated, and you decided to name it the Pivot Path. That's great, and both names are
Mhm.
great. And but I will say this: like the Pivot Path, it just hits different. Like the Pivot
It
Path.
just rolls off. It just hits different. Like, what is that? What is that? So I love About Face. I still do some stuff About Face, but Pivot Path, yeah, that's my baby.
Yes, ma'am. So let's talk about that. Let's back a little bit, talk about the military. So what are some of those principles and values you learned during your time in the military you still apply today?
Integrity, most of all. Work hard, work ethic, and being a self-starter, being an initiator. I think if we want to create change in our communities and around the world, we have to start initiating stuff. When I go to these different conferences and digging deeper into this adult education industry, everybody's always appalled, like shocked, that I am an adult learner, like that I got my GED and started my own program. Because most of the people in the rooms are, people who work as a teacher, administrator, or whatever, but you rarely see an adult learner who went through the process start their own program. So you have to, being an initiator, showing initiative, Also having integrity and good work ethic. Those are three things that I still have instilled in me from the military.
And that makes so much sense as to what you're doing now, especially that portion about being an initiator and actually being a solution seeker in what you've done with the pivot path. Because I'll be honest with you, Ashley, I'm guilty of it at times where complaining about the problem, but not being willing to be a part of the solution. You can't have it both ways. So just again, want to commend you for being a part of the solution and creating this safe haven for adult learners. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It is heavy work. So, a lot of my students sometimes they come in for a GED, but they leave and come in with so much other stuff that they're facing. So it's heavy work. But I believe, God has strengthened me and gave me so many things that I did in my past to help walk them through what they're going through. And it's so crazy. Students come in and they have faced the same issues or problems that I face, and God has given me the grace to get over. So I'm able to give them real life, practical, solutions to help them get through their problems. So it's a win-win, and I'm just so excited for the future of the Pivot Path because we just been in formation. We are a certified 501c3 exempt organization, and just to tell you how God worked that out, we got that status within 3 months. And if you know how hard it is to get a nonprofit exemption status, you'll know that was nothing but the grace of God that allowed that in 3 months. And I'm just excited. I can go on and on and talk about it, and we'll be on here for hours because I have just so many stories, so many revelations through the Pivot Path. But to give you one more nugget, like I said, we started in January. Our first class was in January, and I put a flyer together on Canva. I made a Facebook page. I partnered with the local library, the Juliet Hampton Morgan Library downtown. That's where we have our classes. And they did some print for me, and I put it on social media. And we had a total of 68 adults that signed up in the first 3 weeks of me posting that flyer in that link. I was not expecting 68 people. Yes, I was expecting like 5, 10 people, not 68.
And that's amazing, like hearing that massive growth that you've experienced in this short 7 months, 6 months, because you started in January and now we in July, and just in that short period of time, the massive growth you've experienced. And it just goes back to your willingness to be obedient and start this, because how easy would it have been, especially when you start losing clients, to say, you know what, maybe the pivot path isn't something I need to do right now. So it just goes back to, and again, just commending you for having that obedience and not only praying for a thing, but actually being obedient. Because you know how we get sometimes, actually, we pray for a thing and then we want to do it on our time. We ask God to guide us, and then we want to tell God how to guide us. It don't work like that, you know?
Right. It don't. You gotta move when he say move. And I'm so happy that I'm moving with him because it's a heavy lift. It's me, and I have a part-time admin assistant who was actually the first graduate of the Pivot Path. She was the first one who got her GED through our organization. And now she's my assistant helping me with this work. But it's heavy, it's a heavy lift. I'll just keep it at it's a heavy lift.
And that's amazing and I think you're referring to Rebecca Shepherd.
Yes, yep, Beck, yep, that's her.
That's
That's my right
amazing.
hand man. Right.
No problem. Yes, ma'am. And that's amazing. And it's really just a testament to the work you're doing and the impact you're having on people. The fact that she was your first student and now she's your admin support specialist. That's great. Like, you're really doing some great things. Like you said, people come in with more than just
Mm-hmm.
the education portion and the things you've gone through, and the fact that you're able to recognize that God has given you grace and another chance to be a vessel. That's great that you're pouring into these adults and creating just that safe haven. So that's amazing, and that's good stuff for real.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to come on and talk about the Pivot Path because one of my goals is during this year, and I keep on remembering we're only 7 months in, and we've seen so much support from the community and students. We have a wait list now that our next class don't even start to November because we had that many people that have signed up for the program and referring people and things like that, which we are very grateful for. When I started in January, I was paying for people tests out of my own money, like out of my own pocket. and, creating a safe environment with cute little binders, some a little extra. So when you come into adult education space, these are adults that already feel they made a bad decision. They making a decision to come back into this space. So you want to invite them in, welcoming, encouraging. So like on the first day of class, I have balloons, I have snacks every class. We create a community of communication, outside of class, and just kind of create that you value. We see you, we love you, we want you to continue to be the best you. So whatever we can do to support our students, we love to do, but that also takes support from the community as well.
Yes, ma'am. That's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff. So that last portion, that audacity, it's one thing to have an idea, as we all know, to put action behind it, but to put it out to the world, to be praised or criticized, that's where the audacity comes in my opinion. Who or what gave you that audacity to put the pivot path out to the world?
And I think you know the answer that God gave me the audacity because he gave me the vision. So I know with him, it won't fail. That no weapon that anybody says about the pivot path it is not going to prosper. So that's what gives me the audacity to keep going, to keep, fighting a good fight. I know a lot of people may say, I don't know anything about being an administrator or a founder or even executive director, but I'm learning along the way, training classes and things of that nature. And it's coming like really like clockwork. So the audacity piece definitely comes from like I said before, I'm a fighter and I really don't care about the opinions of other people. And I think not being prideful or boastful or anything like that, don't get me wrong, but only opinion matters are me and the Lord. So because we are the majority and he's going to be the one who carries this long after, I'm sorry, that I'm gone, it's gonna live on through me.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And you 100% correct. I already knew the answer. I just wanted to hear you break it down again, and you did it. So, yes, ma'am. And you did such a great job breaking it down and just expounding on it. And even that part about not getting caught up on people's opinions. I don't look at it as being prideful. I look at it as being just understanding your mission. You gotta do what you gotta do. Because the fact of the matter is,
Mhm.
whether you're doing whether you're at the top of the world, at the bottom of the barrel, people gonna have stuff to say. So you might as well live your best life.
Right. Might
Yes,
as well, and like and people get caught up in other people's opinions, but as long as God say you can do it, everybody else don't even matter.
yes, ma'am, absolutely. So you've done great things with the pivot path. I know great things are coming down the pipeline, which leads to my next portion, vision. What are some of your short-term and long-term goals for the business you feel comfortable sharing?
So some of the short-term goals is we have a lot of students, transportation and childcare is two of the main issues, or keep people from working or keep people also from, continuing education. Now we got the childcare thing under wraps because we allow our students to bring their kids to class with them. The transportation piece, we have a city councilwoman, Marsha Johnson, gave us bus passes and things like that. But our testing center is in Millbrook. So we have classes at the library downtown, but our classes are Millbrook. And I find myself sometimes taking students who don't have transportation to the testing center. So it would be awesome. My short-term goal is to get some kind of grant or some kind of donation or something like that for a van or a small SUV to help transport students to take their tests. And also a building. We are working right now out of the library downtown. We're so grateful for their partnership, for us using their computer lab. But one of my goals in the future is to secure a building for the pivot path.
Yes, ma'am. Those are great goals, both short-term and long-term, and I have no doubt you'll make them all come to fruition.
Hey, with God's help, I'm gonna make it happen.
Yes, ma'am. As we wrap up the podcast, I want to ask $1 million question. I started this podcast to highlight the greatness connected to the city of Montgomery. Whether you were born here or lived here for a significant period of your life, be it college, military, or work, you being a hometown hero, Ashley, I want to ask you, what do you appreciate the most about the Gump?
What I appreciate about the Gump is the opportunity to start things and have the support of the community. And what I mean by that is, if I can go back just a minute, when I started this nonprofit, being fresh at the gate, I didn't think that city and county leaders would gravitate toward, but they have been so supportive in making sure that the community that they serve in are being served. So I appreciate the effort to make sure the citizens in the community get what they need so they can be better, productive citizens in the GUMP.
Powerful stuff. So how can people connect with you, Ashley? What are your social media handles and website?
So my website is www.thepivotpath.org. You can find us on Facebook and IG at The Pivot Path. Send us an email at info@thepivotpath.org if you would like to volunteer as a volunteer teacher, volunteer literacy. I didn't mention, Doug, that we have Google partnerships that anybody who's listening, they don't have to be a member of the Pivot Path, can get Google scholarships to go get 100 of Google certificates for free. So hit me up on my email at info@thepivotpath.org if you want in on those Google certificates, and we'll plug you in.
Yes, ma'am. And of course, I'll put all of that information in the description of the episode. Hey, Ashley, thanks again for the conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. Keep being a light to the community and keep sharing these powerful stories. So we appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am. Good people, that concludes another dope episode of the Gumptown Podcast. In the meantime, in between time, y'all know what to do. Be blessed, be safe, but most importantly, have the audacity to be you. Go on.